So there are three different ways to identify an abuser, through their behavior, through their beliefs, and through their background. And often they'll point to each other's because behaviors are driven by your beliefs, and enough behaviors over time become your background. So when you're looking at someone's behaviors, you're looking for a person who's powering over other people. And I see these generally fall into two categories. One is your might makes right category, like, because I said so, I'm the boss, kind of attitude. And then also you see a right makes right attitude, which is I am morally correct or I am factually correct, and therefore I am entitled to power over you. There's a justification here. Instead of it's a primacy of rightness instead of a primacy of like recognizing someone else's autonomy. Being right is more important than anything else. And the thing is, it's very difficult to argue with somebody like that because they want you to argue with them over whether or not they're right, not whether or not their behavior is inappropriate. Because of course their behavior is appropriate because they're right? Like, anytime you see that, that's you're dealing with somebody who doesn't respect that other people are other people and get to make decisions for themselves. So anyway, when you are looking at beliefs, you are essentially looking for someone who sees themselves as the infallible center, right? Like they're a person who sort of sees themselves as the center of the universe. It's like main character syndrome, like with entitlement, unreasonable entitlement. And so their worldview is that their perspective is the only valid perspective or the only valid reality. Their wants, which they'll categorize as needs, but their needs are more important than the needs of others and should supersede those. Their judgments are beyond questioning, and others exist in relation to them and their desires, right? Like it's a very narcissistic way of looking at the world. And so this mindset, it displays pathological entitlement, extreme egocentrism, a hierarchical worldview where they permanently occupy the top position, and an inability to recognize others as fully autonomous beings with their own experiences, right? So they're a person who they don't see people fully as their own people, usually. One thing that's really important is to look at like who you have to stop for the violence to stop. Who do I have to take out of the situation to make the situation end? And Putin invading Ukraine is like the perfect example of that, right? So Donald Trump is talking about how, Putin wants a peace deal, etc. And the thing is, Putin can have a peace deal anytime he wants. All he has to do is leave. And he does not want to do that, which is why there's no peace deal. But, if you look at Zelensky and Putin, like who do I have to take out of this situation for the violence to stop? It's Putin. Putin won't stop. He has to be stopped. And that's often what makes an abuser, because they don't want to stop themselves because they enjoy powering over others and they want to keep doing what they're doing. They get benefits from it. It's a predatory dominance. So another thing with the behavior of abusers is you'll see them controlling others while often not controlling themselves. They're telling other people what to do, what to think, what to believe, and how to feel. They are not even responsible for their own actions, however, right? So they're telling other people how to live, but they're not even in control of their own situation. And that sort of wanting power but not wanting responsibility, that powering over others while making them responsible for their actions, right? It's like this backwards, upside down way of like how reality works, which is if you have power, you're responsible for that power. If you take actions, you're responsible for those actions. That's literally the point of, like, for example, the legal system. That is how it's supposed to work. So anytime you see this subversion of what is normal, there's a reason for that. And the reason is their beliefs. Let's see, what else did speaking of the law, they often don't respect laws, boundaries, or autonomy. So people get very confused about like what's a boundary. And I did that other video talking about how you can pretty much tell where your intrinsic boundaries are depending on where your personal liability is. Like that gives you an idea of like, do I have control over this or not? Is this mine to exert power? And so this kind of person, often doesn't like having to follow rules somebody else made. You'll see narcissistic trespass. Like if you let them know, like, oh, I don't like this, that's like a red flag to a disordered person that, oh, I need to crush that boundary because they don't get to tell me no. It's like attitude. Let's see. Oh, that's right. So I have like the 7 signs or patterns of abusive thinking. That's sort of, the thinking lets you know what their beliefs are. And I've had that on the subreddit. I'm just going to read it right now. Their feelings, their needs, wants always take priority. They feel that being right is more important than anything else. They justify their problematic or abusive actions because they're right. They engage in image management, which is controlling the narrative and how others see them because they acted in being right. They try to control, change your thoughts, feelings, beliefs, actions. They have an antagonistic relational paradigm. So it's you versus them versus you, them versus others, others versus them. And you might not even know about that until like there's an argument or some kind of conflict. And then suddenly they're saying stuff and you're very confused by it. And then the last one is an inability to see things from someone else's perspective. Like they don't have to agree, but they should still be able to understand another person's perspective. Because if they don't, this means that they don't have a model of another person as a fully realized human being. Like this is one of the very first things children learn. It's called, my brain. It's called theory of mind. There we go. It's called theory of mind. So when we're children, one of our developmental stages is developing theory of mind. We suddenly start to realize that this is another person, a human being that's not us, and that they have a different way of looking at the world. So, with children, it might be you have someone who takes an item and like holds it behind their back, and the child knows that that person has it behind the back, but there's this third child who doesn't know that, who just thinks the thing disappeared. And so as they sort of like, get these concepts, they start to understand, oh, this is a distinct human being with a distinct perspective that's different from mine. And, what you see with abusers is they are often extremely childish. A lot of the behaviors you see are behaviors that we see in very young children. So they're little tempy tantrums when things don't go their way, or when they just insist on something and that has nothing to do with reality. Like if you've ever dealt with a toddler who's telling you the sky is green and you're just like, okay, no, baby, like, but when it's in the body of an adult and it's someone we love, we give them more benefit of the doubt than we should. So, and because they're bigger, the little tempy tantrums are now abusive rages, but if you can see through, like you're dealing with emotionally and intellectually like a toddler who's having like their big feelings that they can't handle. And so that's why abusers are trying to control everybody else, because they can't handle their own stuff. Or if you're dealing with like a very predatory Machiavellian kind of traditional type of user, someone who just really enjoys controlling other people. But at the end of the day, they don't like reality as it is. They want it to be something different. And so they will power over other people so that everybody else participates and enacts this like play they've got going on in their minds. I want it, so therefore I'm going to do whatever I want. Like me. Anyway, what you're looking for with healthy people is you're looking for people who recognize that other people get to say no. They get to decide things for themselves. They get to wear what they want, and then you get to make decisions based off that. You're like, no, I'm not feeling that. Okay, great. And like we all move on with our days. That's why unhealthy people, abusive people, people with certain personality disorders, untreated, just absolutely lose their minds because they don't have mental, emotional flexibility to deal with people doing their own stuff. They only feel comforted and secured if they're the ones pulling the strings. And again, that's like a very childish way to feel. Now, children are not abusers. Children are children. Abusers are immature. So that's, you know, you don't look at a child and go like, oh, that child's abusive. You know, you're looking at adults acting like children. And because they're adults, they have a lot of power. And so when they do that, they do a lot of damage. Anyway, I hope this makes sense. I'm going to talk